to everyone. I'm okay. Thanks, Lee. Uh, so I'm so excited to be here today and to introduce you all to our exemplary speakers on a topic that is extremely critical. I'm Ekta Anjan, and I'm the Global Health Policy and Advocacy Manager at Results Canada. For those of you who are new to Results, we are a nonprofit grassroots advocacy organization that works to end extreme poverty. And Results Canada has been a huge champion of ending TB and holding Canada accountable to ending TB. We are also part of Stop TB Canada Secretariat. And for those of you new to Stop TB Canada, we are a network of advocates committed to ending TB in Canada and abroad. Before I open the floor to our speakers, I'd like to provide a high level overview of our discussion today and why this World TB Day in 2020 and 2023 as a year is particularly critical in the fight to end TB. So we will be recording this session and we'll share this with those who can't participate in the session later. And also through the session, if you have any questions at any point, please feel free to post it in chat. We'll also have time later at the end of the session to raise questions. And we'd really appreciate it if all of you put yourselves on mute. And if you want to talk, please do raise your hand and we'll come over to you. So to kick off today's discussion, as we all know, disruptions to programming and care caused by COVID-19 continues to have a devastating impact on TB worldwide. And it's reversed a decade of progress. Deaths and incidents climbed for a second year in a row in 2021. What is most painful and frustrating for all of us as advocates is that TB, as you all know, is preventable and mostly treatable. The burden of the disease is not defined by lack of science, but rather a lack of political will, cultural understanding, and fundamental neglect of the struggles of marginalized populations who are clearly disproportionately affected by TB. And this inequity is most evident in Canada. I always say if there's one country that can show the world that ending TB is possible, it's Canada, because Canada has a low overall prevalence of TB. However, it remains a significant concern in Indigenous communities and newcomer populations. The incidence of TB in Inuit communities, for example, is more than 300 times higher than in non-Indigenous Canadian-born population. And in 2018, Canada committed to eliminating TB from Inuit Nunavut by 2030. And the same year, Canada also joined countries in endorsing the political declaration to confirm its political and financial commitment to global TB elimination. It's been 5 years since Canada made that promise, and nearly every target in the declaration has been missed. As we talk right now, the government of Nunavut is dealing with its largest reported TB outbreak since the government made its promise in 2018. That said, Canada has contributed a lot to end TB, particularly in its last year's announcement of $1.2 billion to the Global Fund to fight AIDS, TB, and malaria. But from the continued prevalence of TB in marginalized and historically marginalized communities, it is evident that Canada clearly needs to do better and Canada clearly needs to do more. So for those interested to know more about the progress Canada has made towards domestic and global TB elimination targets, and if you're looking for a resource to hold Canada accountable, I'm excited to share Stop TB Canada's TB tracker, which tracks where Canada is at with its TB related commitments. So my colleague Lee will drop the link in the chat. Thank you so much, Lee. Okay, that's enough from me. I think I'm happy to introduce you to our speakers today who speak to the challenges and opportunities for us to advocate to end TB in Canada and abroad, and how Canada should show up at critical moments in 2023. With this, I'll hand it over to Adam Houston from Médecins Sans Frontières to talk us through some of the challenges to TB programming and care in Canada, particularly how TB communities affected by TB struggle with accessing essential medicines. And this is happening in Canada. With this, over to you, Adam.
All right, great. Thank you, Ekta, for that introduction. As Ekta mentioned, I'm out of Houston, currently on my lunch break from MSF. Thanks very much for having me here. Now, I just have to get this to, it's hidden by the other screen here now. Sorry, hang on. There's always somebody, and it's usually me. There we go. Okay. Okay. That's all working. Somebody will poke me if things go haywire. One of the things that Stop TB Canada has been highlighting is the need for a national strategy, TB strategy here in Canada. And I believe that this link will also be in the chat shortly if it isn't already. I'm going to highlight a couple particular points here. As Ekta mentioned, I'm mostly going to be emphasizing the issue of access to essential medicines here in Canada. But as you'll see, this will touch on some of the other issues that we face here. But of course, I was about to say it is World TB Day. I guess World TB Day is coming early a little bit with this presentation, but this is about World TB Day. So I want to position this a little bit in the global context, which is also something subsequent speakers will be doing. So, and where Canada sits there, and how Canada really needs to, by having national strategy, will be better positioned to meet its goals and indeed its obligations at the international level. So many of you are going to be familiar with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. These are the goals that are meant to be met by 2030. Canada has signed on to these goals, and indeed there is a goal to end TB. Canada's treatment of the SDGs has been interesting. Canada's mostly talked about them in an external sense, right? They're talking about them in the context of foreign aid and so on. It hasn't really been very self-reflective. Where Canada does talk about the SDGs, and Canada has actually set its own indicators. And it does have one for TB, and it does highlight a very serious issue in Canada, as Ekta has mentioned. And as we see from the progress status at the bottom, Canada recognizes that it is doing quite badly on meeting this particular indicator. However, if we're talking about the universal indicators in the SDGs, we see some of the issues in Canada highlighted there as well. One is the issue of data. There is somewhat newer Canadian TB data that they haven't updated yet on StatsCan's SDG report. But nonetheless, that is a consistent issue in Canada, is that we don't tend to have immediate up-to-date TB stats. That's one of the reasons there are tools like the TB tracker that was mentioned. But as I said, I'm going to be highlighting essential medicines for TB. If we look at the goals for essential medicines under the SDGs, we see that Canada, more than halfway into the period of the SDGs, is still exploring data sources to even measure its progress on this particular issue. And this, again, is an issue with particular implications for TB. So, over the last decade, a little over, the TB toolbox has expanded. We do have some new TB drugs globally over the past little over 10 years. And in the past couple of years, we've also seen some really exciting developments in how we use the tools we already have, right? Developing new regimens using existing drugs. So we've got new regimens that are safer, faster, and more effective for drug-resistant TB. And for drug-susceptible TB, it's been quite remarkable. Just not very long ago at all, finally broke the long-standing 6-month barrier for treatment with a 4-month regimen involving rifapentine. Like, wow, 4 months, that's so exciting. Just a few weeks ago, there was an announcement of an 8-week regimen involving bedaquiline, that may also be effective for drug-susceptible TB. So doing some remarkable things with existing tools at the global level. Unfortunately, when it comes to integrating exciting things happening at the global level and what's happening in Canada, we see a bit of a mismatch, and that involves availability of some of these drugs. Some of these drugs, like bedaquiline and rifapentine that I mentioned, they're in the Canadian tuberculosis standards. They're in WHO guidance. They're on the WHO's model list of essential medicines that every functional health system should have. But they're not actually available in Canada, some of them. A number of these drugs are, in fact, not formally available in Canada at all. They are not marketed in Canada. And so when we see these international conversations, like this campaign led by Treatment Action Group, pushing for access to the drugs that are found in these new, very effective regimens, we see Canada's bit sitting on the sidelines, not part of this conversation, despite the fact that we don't have effective access to these drugs. So, Canada really needs to get off the sidelines and get into the game here. The issue of important drugs, in Canadian TB guidelines not being available in Canada is a longstanding one. In fact, it's such a longstanding problem that it's actually baked right into the TB guidelines. This, you see this excerpt here, explicitly highlight barriers to access to these drugs like bedaquiline, cycloserine, clofazimine, that because they're not formally marketed in Canada, have to be accessed through mechanisms like the Special Access Program, which creates barriers. It's a mechanism for accessing new unapproved drugs, even experimental drugs. It's not designed for access to standard of care drugs. We see this as well with rifapentine, which is increasingly widely used in Canada, where it's been used for treatment of latent TB, standard of care for that purpose in Nunavut. But again, also a drug that is not available in Canada, formally, even while at the international level, it's being integrated into these new regimens for things like treatment of drug-susceptible TB. The use of rifapentine, which again is not formally available here, is already so widespread in Canada that the government is actually importing it through a bulk importation mechanism that is explicitly for a public health crisis. That's this access to drugs in exceptional circumstances mechanism. I won't get into the history here, but this was a mechanism created a few years ago for the opioid overdose crisis. Currently, the only drug being imported through this mechanism, the only drug is rifapentine for TB, for what is explicitly identified as the tuberculosis crisis. But again, this drug's not formally available in Canada. So, why is this the case? I'm going to pick on Sanofi a little bit here. The reason that rifapentine and these other drugs are not available is the companies involved simply aren't interested in selling in Canada. Canada's regulatory system is based on keeping bad drugs out, right? Stuff that doesn't work, stuff that's unsafe. It is not based on bringing good drugs in. So, Stop TB Canada, we've certainly talked to Sanofi, and they've made it clear that they're simply not interested in selling this drug here. At the same time, Sanofi is perfectly willing to accept, hundreds of millions of dollars in subsidies from the government of Canada to build other manufacturing facilities, and somehow the trade-off of here's hundreds of millions of dollars, could you file the paperwork to market this drug in Canada? That never quite seems to be on the table. I also want to highlight that access to drugs is an issue for drugs that are formally available in Canada as well. Rifampin, or if there's any international folks on the call, rifampicin, is probably the key drug in the TB toolbox. Canada entered 2023 with rifampin in Tier 3 shortage. Tier 3 shortage, as it says here, are those that have the greatest potential impact on Canada's drug supply and healthcare system. This is not the first time this has happened. This has actually happened a number of times in the past few years. And one of the few developments in the supply over the last couple of years is that one of the two previous suppliers has now exited the market in Canada. That supplier is actually Sanofi, who's exited. So there's only one supplier left, which helps fuel these shortages. In turn, that's not the only basic TB drug frequently in shortage. Here we see ethambutol, for example, also in shortage periodically. So how do these pieces come together? How do we integrate the national and the international? Well, there are tools out there. There's things like the Global Drug Facility, which is essentially a bulk procurement, pooled procurement mechanism to assure access to quality assured TB drugs. All of these drugs that I've talked about here, all of them are available through the GDF. Furthermore, Canada already funds the GDF. Canada recognizes, wow, these are super important drugs internationally. We should fund access to them at a time when they aren't formally available in Canada. This is an obvious mismatch, obvious reasons to revisit this, and all the more reason, as Robin will discuss later on when she's talking about the high-level conference. The last high-level meeting on TB made it very clear that the GDF is open to any country. What Canada needs to do is take the steps necessary to actually access the drugs that already recognize the importance of funding internationally. 32 seconds over, so thanks.
Thank you so much, Adam, and for summing up that so effectively, the urgent need for removing barriers to accessing essential medicines. It's just so unfortunate that Canada doesn't see this as a priority, but this is also an opportunity for us as advocates to ensure Canada moves us forward on a priority basis. I'd also like to note there are ongoing efforts to develop TB elimination strategies within Canada. For example, the framework developed by ITK in collaboration with the federal government that is Inuit specific. And what we are calling for in our domestic campaign is we're calling on Canada to have this scaled up to the national level to comprehensively and urgently address all the points Adam just raised. So thank you so much, Adam, for that. And now I'm super, super excited to introduce you all to Eloisa Zepeda Teng, who is joining us from the Philippines. So Louis is a multi-drug resistant TB survivor and the founder and president of TB People Philippines, a network for and of TB survivors. Her commitment to end TB is evident from her presence on this call today. It's midnight for her now, and she was all on board when we invited her. Thank you so much, Louis. Now I'll hand it over to you to take us through your journey as a survivor and as such a powerful advocate in the TB space. Louis will also speak to us on how Canada can and has supported the fight to end TB in countries like the Philippines. With this, over to you, Louis.
Hi, can you hear me? Thank you, Ekta, Robin, and everybody in Canada for inviting me for this. Once a year, I do this international talk. And also it gives me some sort of a diary for what I've experienced 16 years ago. So again, my name is Maria Eloisa Zepeda Teng, and I am 41 next week. And I have 2 kids, a girl and a boy. And just to give you a background of what I was, back in 2007, I was an architect by profession. And 2 years after graduation, I got this disease, and turns out that my disease was not just a pulmonary tuberculosis. So my case was an extrapulmonary. It went directly to my neck, and then it went in and out of my brain. And I was hospitalized 3 times. And on the 3rd hospitalization, that was the only time they were able to diagnose me properly. But it was too late, because when they administered the medications to me, the 3 weeks of taking in the first line of medication, it made me have optic neuritis. So they told me that don't worry about it, it will go back. Although I was also experiencing a mild stroke, Parkinson's syndrome, paralysis, and also some we call this memory loss. So they would actually hear me not able to recognize people around me, and then they really considered that my case will be okay after 6 months. But after the 3 months of confinement, which also left my family with a catastrophic cost of $60,000, if I'm not mistaken. But they believed that everything would be fine. But after 6 months, I fell again, and then they rushed me again to the emergency. Turns out that I'm resistant to rifampicin, and they gave me not just double of the medication, but triple the medication, and then triple also of the duration. From 6 months, it became additional 18 months and additional last 4 months until I was able to finish the whole treatment after 2 years. So from 2007 to 2009, that's what I experienced. And I I won't be able to be an architect anymore because I'm totally blind now. After that, good thing I have a lot of peer support from the disability sector in the country, because the United Nations Convention for the Rights of Persons with Disability was signed by my president back then in that year 2008, and I was able to hide what happened to me with my fellow persons with disability. But it was just like a calling for me to take another degree. I took a master's degree in the U.S. in American University for School in International Service, and I was able to finish a master's in public policy, and went back, and I was able to do a lot of engagements from our global coalition of TB activists. In 2013, I represented the Western region, our Western Pacific region, and then back in 2017, I was able to get an offer, which is to have the fourth national chapter of TB People Global. So this is what I have established right before the pandemic, which is my organization. So here is the logo that we created in accordance to the MOA of TB People Global. And then my group is composed of course, TB survivors, close contacts, of all of those that needing social, economic, and legal advice because of this disease. And we were able to reach our third year this month. Third year, yeah, March 2, 2020 was when I registered this in the Securities and Exchange Commission. And now we are able to do this social media platform, Facebook, which is very famous in my country. And this is where I get all of these inquiries about the disease, tuberculosis, if it's COVID, if it's pneumonia. And we were able to really give them that kind of testimony that they can get that kind of peer support from my group because I'm legal. And now I'm able to perform as the monitoring group for our Department of Health. And then the Department of Health even gave us a role in the campaign for TB Free Philippines. And that's where I was able to manage all of their inquiries on what they will do with all of their side effects of the medication, from DS, drug susceptible TB, to drug resistant TB. And then there, my group was able to get projects from USAID. We perform what we call the treatment buddy. We collect inquiries, 20 to 80 inquiries a month. And then we do all of the needed incidental reporting if the health service provider is not doing their job properly. And because that's what I think is needed, because I'm an activist by profession now, and I want to make sure that these providers do the right service delivery, and we will provide the needed demand for the proper supply of these deliveries. And then I was very fortunate that I was able to get a project again from Global TB Alliance New York, and this is regarding the new regimen BPAL. And we were very jealous because we took 21 medications every day back in 2007, and we had injections in our behind, in our arm every single day, and we were just delusional the whole time because of another drug called cycloserine. So those are the things that, you know, even if it hurts that it's only because it's discovered now, still it's a good thing that we are able to observe they call this revolution of how things will be better for TB treatment. So this is what we were able to create, our TB education videos, and converted into 8 dialects.
Unsa kining bipal na pagtambal?
Cosa ba esterihimen bipal?
Ano pala ang ini nga bipal nga pagpabulong?
Ana ka dire ito'y bipal nga agas?
Anto sa tambalan niya bipal?
Nano ba ya ini na burulungan na bipal?
Ano ba itong gamutan na bipal?
So there,
Unsa kining bipal na pag
we have 187 dialects because we have a lot of islands here. And I proposed to Global TB Alliance the usage of these languages that would be able to reach more of the unreached. That is also part of our Deadly Divide 2.0. And I really think that it's just a basic problem. We need to know how to talk to the key affected population. And most of them still thinks that this is just an old disease. This is not airborne, and this is what do you call this, acquired through your family's genes. So that's still the situation in my country. And when we were able to create this TB education, I think that impacted our social media campaign, and we were able to get a lot more inquiries. And I really believe that we have to enhance these kinds of information, because when I started introducing this to the Department of Health, they were very honest with me that the last TB 101 advocacy material that they created was back in 1994, and it was for a grade 5 comprehension, and they just didn't think that it's very important to do advocacy materials. So I'm really seeing a lot of I don't know, humps on the way to make this NTB campaign. And then the most recent activity that I participated was I joined the PCCM, Philippine Country Coordinating Mechanism of Global Fund. And now I'm sitting there as a CAP committee. And I really was able to get all of these information that I've kept in my memory for 16 years now. I need to make sure before, you know, there are signs that I might have an early early Alzheimer's. That's what my neurologist told me, because I still have abscess in my brain. So I want to make sure that I'm able to share what I experience, what I think should be done in this crisis, in this disease, before I leave the earth. So I just hope that I was able to prepare all of these audience in the Global Fund, CCM, the USAID, everybody in our social media platform, that this is treatable. This has a solution. All we have to do is do the advocacy, right? And I'm really happy for this kinds of invitation. Thank you for appreciating my life story and my fight to really end TB in while we still have the time. So thank you again.
Thank you, Lewis, for sharing your story and for showing us the impact of advocacy, and most importantly, for reminding us to place communities front and center in the fight against TB. So thank you so much for that. And it's also a reminder to let us know that we are not alone in the fight against TB within Canada. Like as we fight, I mean, there are advocates across the world fighting alongside us. So thank you so much for that, Lewis. Like I mentioned when I started, if you have any questions for Adam and Louis, please do post them in the chat. Our next speaker is Dr. Robin Wade, a huge supporter and a friend of Results Canada and Stop TB Canada. Robin is currently co-leading the Affected Communities and Civil Society Coordination Hub for the UN high-level meetings on TB. So she'll talk us through how 2023 offers an opportunity for impact in the fight to end TB. So with this, over to you, Robin.
Thanks, Ekta. It's a pleasure to be with you all today. Hi, again, my name's Robin. I currently work as an independent consultant on all things equipping, mobilizing, facilitating coordination, and supporting NTB advocates. I wear a number of different hats. I'm a member of the Stop TB Canada Steering Committee. I am the Access Advocacy Lead with TB Alliance, who is critical in the development of the BPAL regimen that Adam and Louis were both speaking of. And I am now most recently supporting the Global Fund Advocates Network, who is supported by the Stop TB Partnership to coordinate affected communities and civil society organizations around the high-level meeting on tuberculosis process that's happening this September 2022. So I'm going to share my screen and get a slide deck up on it for us all. And really what I want to walk you through today is what the high-level meeting process is, why it's critically important for all NTB advocates that are here in the room to engage in the process. And the work really starts right now. The high-level meeting will be September 22nd, but there's lots of different moments between now and then for us to be engaging to make that political moment as high impactful as absolutely possible. So share screen. You can see it. Can everyone see this? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so there's going to be a high-level meeting on TB attached to the United Nations General Assembly, which happens every single year, this September 2022. We just recently saw that the modalities resolution was passed, and the modalities resolution is essentially the document that lays out what the high-level meeting will look like itself. So it gives you an overview of what the proposed agenda will be, what the theme is, the priority areas for action. And high-level meetings are important because they bring together political leaders from all UN member states. So for the HLM on TB, we expect to see heads of states there, and if not heads of states, relevant ministers in the room talking about how do we build the political will, how do we invest resources, and what targets do we need to meet to reach the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030, sorry. So I was mentioning that there are different moments throughout the HLM process that you can engage in. One of those moments is called a multi-stakeholder hearing. And we have dates for this multi-stakeholder hearing already. It's going to take place on May 8th and 9th. And this is a critically important space for experts, academics, frontline healthcare providers, people with lived experience to come to the table and share their experience from their nations to influence what's going to be in the outcome document from the high-level meeting, which is called a political declaration. And this political declaration will at the end ultimately have a number of things that heads of states and UN members commit to doing. So we want to get as much of relevant asks in there as possible from the grassroots level experience of people around the world. So I'm going to share with you, or Lee probably will in the chat box, a couple of links. One is a registration link from the UN itself to register for this multi-stakeholder hearing. And I think there's a number of people in this room who should register to speak. Adam, for example, you've lots to say on access to essential medicines. Tina, our co-chair of Stop TB Canada, would be great to have her speaking, sharing what's happening on the front lines with the Indigenous communities that she's working with. So please do, if you want to show up at the multi-stakeholder hearing, you need to register through that link, and you need to do it before April 7th. The other link that we're going to throw in the chat box is a Google form that the coordination hub that's hosted by GFAN has out live now, because we want to know who around the world is interested in showing up and speaking at the multi-stakeholder hearing so that we can most effectively coordinate our kiosk presentation and our engagement there in person, and also so that we can take that list around to potential funders so that we can get as many people with lived experience and from the civil society space to New York as possible. And just to note that for this multi-stakeholder hearing, you can register with or without consultative status to the UN. So the coordination hub that I'm working with right now through GFAN is supported financially by the Global Stop TB Partnership, and it's supported with expertise from our leadership group. And what you can see on screen here is the different members of our leadership group that come from all different regions of the world. They're all working specifically in the affected community and civil society space. And some of them are working for organizations that have particularly strategic value adds to bring to the coordinating table for the community this year. I'm just going to throw up on screen now what is our roadmap of moments and advocacy action throughout the year leading up to the high-level meeting itself and also post the HLM. So right now we're in March. What you can see in this table is moments across the top, what the Coordination Hub will be doing to equip, mobilize, and support advocates around the world, and what you as an advocate at the national level can be doing across these different moments to engage in making sure that your country shows up with strong commitments to the high-level meeting. So right now at World TB Day, we know that that's a moment in and of itself, March 24th. We also know that the Deadly Divide 2.0 report is going to be launched. And a number of you, thank you very much for participating, engaged in consultations where essentially what we did as partners around the world is talk to CSOs and affected communities to get an understanding and a snapshot of what's happening in their national context so that we could develop from that an understanding of how we're doing on progress from the last HLM in 2018. And we can start developing shared asks coming from the community perspective that we can lead into the high-level meeting. We also know that there's Stop TB board meetings happening in March as well. So what you can expect from the Coordination Hub is a World TB Day toolkit, which I'll show you in a moment what it will entail. And you as an advocate can use World TB Day as an advocacy and engagement hook. And it's a moment for you to start your high-level meeting advocacy and reach out to key targets in your country. So I'm not going to talk through the other moments of the year, but just know that there are more moments and the hub will be doing tons of different work to equip and support you to engage. But this is a collective effort. We all need to be rallying behind some sort of coordinated advocacy approach to be able to line up the dominoes to the high-level meeting and a strong political declaration coming out of it at the end of September. So for World TB Day, yes, we can end TB if we all take action. The purpose of the hub's engagement on World TB Day is really around making the high-level meeting on TB known and a priority to the community and other key stakeholders, and it's to kickstart your HLM advocacy. So what you can expect from us, we're going to launch a global accountability scorecard asset that will link back to the 2018 high-level meeting, and we're going to support you to reach out to key targets at the national level. So you'll see 3 template emails coming from us at the start of next week that you can adapt and roll out as you see fit. One of those emails or letters is going to be targeted to your head of state. So here that would be Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. It's going to be an ask of him to show up to the high-level meeting on TB in New York and to show up with something to champion or to pledge. Another email is going to be to MPs, so members of parliament or ministers that have an interest. So here that would be Minister of Health, Minister of Finance, Minister of International Development. You want to use World TB Day as a hook to ask for a meeting with them and ask them in the most immediate term to send that invitation on to the head of state to try and put pressure on the head of state to attend beyond just you as a constituent. And the third template email is going to be to your national ambassadors to the United Nations itself. And what we want to ask of them is, again, for a meeting, and also for them to start getting in line the process to register your nation to make a statement at the high-level meeting. They can also support by making sure that you are engaged in the country delegation process throughout the high-level meeting, multi-stakeholder hearings, and HLM. So that's what you can expect from us. We really do hope that even though we're developing these assets at a very global level, that you as the experts at the national level will repurpose them and localize them to your own context and crowd into this advocacy, because we need to start this work now if the high-level meeting is going to be the moment we need it to be for a renewed political commitment and renewed investment in the fight to end tuberculosis. So how you can stay in touch with us, we host regular monthly deep dive calls. Maybe some of you have attended those already. If not, we're going to share a link to our landing page where you can register for all future calls. This is a space for the global community to come together, share resources, share information, and get the latest intel and info of the HLM process. We're also sharing information through the TB Civil Society listserv, which I'll share a link to a form for you to fill in if you aren't already on that listserv. Again, this is a space for sharing information, and I would love it for you to share back with the community what you're doing at a national level. Because if you share what you're doing at the national level, you might inspire action in another country, and you might save somebody a lot of time and energy and prevent them from reinventing the wheel if you've already developed a really great asset that they could just localize and run within their own country context. So please do share in those spaces. And also we are on Twitter. That's all from me. And just to shout out the really great scorecard from the Stop TB Canada network. The hub is developing a global level scorecard, but if you already have a national level scorecard, use that in your outreach emails to the targets that we're going to send you. There's no point in not making use of that asset. So if you have the assets, make use of them and use our work as inspiration where needed, or adapt it or lift it exactly as is, whatever works for you. And I'll stop there.
Thank you, Robin, for that compelling, sorry, I just realized my video is off. Yeah, so thank you, Robin, for the compelling presentation and for so succinctly outlining what we can do as advocates. I just wanted to flag that we'll also have a campaign starting from June towards in the lead up to the UN HLM, where we'll also have another webinar where you can take all those actions that Robin just outlined, so you don't have to limit yourself to just World TB Day. With this, I'm going to open the floor for questions for our speakers. So if you have any questions, please to drop them in the chat or use the raise hand function. So now's the time to raise your questions. And thank you, Oliver Femi. That's a really good resource to track TB journey of communities affected by TB in the North. Thank you for sharing that. So does anyone have any questions? Oh, yes, Preeti?
Yeah, good afternoon and good night to the speakers wherever they are. Thank you for very interesting presentations. Today, I definitely have enriched myself in terms of understanding TB in a more focused and in a more wider way. My question is basically not addressed to a particular speaker, but in general to maybe all the speakers. I'm just trying to understand that while we advocate for the fight against TB, how much is it relevant to talk about TB in association with, say, diabetes, which we know that diabetes and TB do coexist, and HIV we've all known from a long time. And especially in the Canadian context, we know that diabetes is an emerging epidemic. So how would you sort of tie along the fight to TB with other diseases, and how good that could be an advocacy tool to address TB?
Thank you for that question, Preeti. And I can like open this question to like not just the speakers, but anyone who wants to take this question, because I know like we have a lot of participants who are health practitioners, who are advocates as well. So does anyone want to take this question? Louis, I see you've unmuted yourself, so.
Yeah, I also want to share to all of you that, of course, I live in the Philippines and we eat rice. And almost everybody here has a problem with diabetes. And these persons with TB that we're taking care of, most of them repeat the treatment because of diabetes. So we're lacking the kind of nutrition advice in our algorithm. It's more of you just take the medication, eat whatever you want. But no, we're supposed to be we're preparing the person on how to take care of the body, because every sugar spike doesn't really make you have a successful treatment. And all of our doing the SSOR treatment will actually eventually fail the treatment and then go to another treatment, which is the individualized treatment regimen from 9 months to 20 months. So that's the situation with all of our diabetes patients. So it's very important. So thank you.
Thanks so much for that, Louis. Over to you, Robin.
Yeah, Preeti, I would say that looking at TB from a very comprehensive, holistic perspective and how TB is relevant to other infectious or non-communicable diseases, super critical in what you're doing. How you do it, I think, as an advocate can change. If you're engaging with a diabetes community, then of course speaking about diabetes and TB is smart for starting a conversation and learning more. So integrating and infiltrating other sectors where it makes sense to do so is advisable from an advocacy perspective. Wanting to share that there are 2 other HLMs happening this year as well. There's a high-level meeting on universal health coverage that'll be happening the day before the HLM on TB. And there's also a high-level meeting on pandemic prevention, preparedness, and response happening. So all of these health-related issues are integrated, and we need to kind of break out of our siloed approaches and start working more horizontally. So there's definitely an effort to do that, and we should all be leaning into doing that. And across the HLMs, that work is happening as well too. So we're developing messages for how is TB relevant to the UHC HLM, and how is TB relevant to the pandemic prevention, preparedness, and response HLM.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you so much. Yes, I like the idea of horizontal advocacy rather than just vertical advocacy, because I think it makes sense. Ultimately, we know that there are individuals out there who have co-occurring diseases and a double burden of diseases, so to say. So it definitely makes sense. And I think one sort of counteracts the other sometimes. So it's so very helpful. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Robin. Thanks, Preeti, for that question. Does anyone have any other questions? Or any like moments or anything you want to raise? It doesn't have to be a question.
Me again.
Yeah, Louis.
Yeah, Ikta. And also, the reason for what do you call this, education about nutrition is that most of our patients taking these medications that makes the body warm experiences hyperacidity. So it's because of the carbohydrates that they're putting into their body while they're on treatment, and that it actually makes them stop the treatment because of all of these acid reflux, all of these vomiting, because they just don't understand the effect of the food that they're putting into their body while they're on treatment. So there has to be that kind of clear definition between this because of the treatment and this because of your diet. So it's very important to really educate our persons with TB regarding these side indicators, how to make the treatment successful. Thanks.
Thanks so much for that, Louis. Does anyone else have any comments, concerns, questions? Okay. So if not, like, we can move on. Huge thanks to all the speakers for your thought-provoking presentations. I know we'll be leaving the sessions as stronger advocates. And if you're interested in joining in advocacy actions to end TB right now in the lead up to World TB Day, there are quite a few opportunities. For example, Results Canada, along with Stop TB Canada, and our inspiring network of volunteers, many of who are here on this call today, we've got like landmarks across Canada to be lit in red on World TB Day. So you can find a monument near you, take a pic, post it on social to spread awareness on TB. Please do feel free to tag your MP and to show why Canada should and must care. So you could also email your MP asking the MP to sign on to a letter to the health minister, calling on Canada to set up a TB elimination strategy. Lee will post an email template for you in the chat. And for those wanting to take quick action right now, you can use this link to tweet on, and the post is on why Canada should invest in TB. And our current campaign calls on Canada to invest $33 million over 3 years for TB Reach, a life-saving mechanism that ensures no one is left behind in the fight to end TB. And for those wanting to learn more about advocacy in general, Results Canada is organizing a national conference from May 6th to 8th. You can use the link provided to register. And with this, we'll end today's session, but let's keep the conversation and the advocacy going. Thank you so much, Louis, Adam, and Robin, for your time. And thank you all for joining us today. And yes, together, let's end TB. Thank you.